Big 49ers injury update morning after their physical joint practice against the Titans, which also featured some nifty plays from the secondary. That's the Jacob Robinson interception, and Jack Jones celebrating with him. He's been making plays for the 49ers. Here's some of that physicality. Fred Warner and then Jair Brown, who later had a pick six there, thuds up the tight end of the Tennessee Titans. That injury report, as promised, Nick Bosa at the top of it. Knee tendinitis is the more specific diagnosis given by Kyle Shanahan yesterday. Kyle said that it is week to week for Nick Bosa and that there isn't much to worry about at this point.
Just soreness, tendinitis. It's a pretty normal thing with ACLs. Just talking to our guys, they say it happens to about 90% of the guys we've had. So it's a normal thing, and that's why we got to be smart here for, week to week. But feeling no concerns about them being any more than that.
So we will obviously monitor this situation. One warning that I would give is that this was Nick Bosa's third ACL tear. I know that he classifies as a superhuman to have been able to even come back from 2 ACL tears and to look as good as he did earlier this training camp coming off the third. But at some point, you can't just keep on coming back from ACL tears. I don't know if Nick has reached that point. I'm not saying that he has, but it is something to monitor as he comes back from this third ACL tear. 49ers aren't worried. As you heard Kyle Shanahan say, 90% of ACL cases have some sort of tendinitis. So we will see how this progresses with Nick Bosa. As long as he's ready to go by week 1, then you're fine with it if you're the 49ers. You're trying to get him ready for that week 1 date. Then there is Christian McCaffrey. Now, this one you really don't have to worry about right now. McCaffrey is just a little bit of stiffness. It's like the Zhaun Stribling situation that kept Zhaun out of practice for 4, maybe 5 sessions. Zhaun Stribling is back and dominating. Christian's already put in enough work this offseason to be fully ready for week 1. I've even said it looks faster this year than he did last year because he's a year further removed from the Achilles injury. 413 touches last year. The key for Christian McCaffrey is going to be keeping him fresh so he could continue showing some of the explosiveness that we have already seen so far in this 2026 training camp. And keeping him fresh, that's going to be very, I think, reliant on the health of Jordan James and Kaelon Black. James still out with the rib. Kaelon Black still out with the adductor injury. So the 49ers suited up only 3 running backs yesterday against the Titans in that joint practice. Patrick Taylor Jr., Khalil Herbert, who actually had some nice runs, and Sincere McCormick. We will see what the 49ers do for the game on Thursday. Obviously, no starters or very few starters playing for the 49ers, so McCaffrey definitely won't be out there, but they may want to get one more running back, maybe sign somebody off the street to have in uniform to finish this game. Kyle Juszczyk is currently out with a broken finger. He also won't play, so a lot of injuries in that 49ers backfield, but they do hope to get Black and Jordan James back before the start of the season, and be a good time for Isaac Guerendo to be cleared from his pectoral tear because there are some opportunities from some carries right now. Christian Kirk, 49ers wide receiver, coming back from the calf strain. He's been running fairly fast off on the side. So is Jacob Cowing, and Cowing especially needs to be back sooner rather than later. A lot of young receivers making a case for this 49ers roster. Vidarian Lowe, the swing tackle, was hurt on day 1 of camp. High ankle sprain for Vidarian Lowe, so we've always expected 4 to 6 weeks for him. Brett Toth, backup center, maybe a factor in the guard competition. Coming back from the concussion, saw him on the exercise bike earlier this week. Keon White also has an adductor injury. I saw Keon, the defensive end, standing watching practice yesterday. I feel this is a week-to-week situation. Usually when a guy is standing out there watching practice and not having to rehab 24/7, it is a decent sign as to his availability and the relative short term. Other defensive end, Michael Williams, seems that he's been ramping up his rehab. And remember, he tore his ACL 6 weeks after Nick Bosa, so Bosa, they've expected ready for week one. It wasn't even on the PUP list. Michael Williams, that is much more of a question, but it does seem that he's doing well, and he was also standing and watching practice for the 49ers. One more injury is Malik Mustafa and the strained hamstring. Sounds like that was something that was expected to last a few weeks. It's been a couple weeks since the 49ers safety exited with that injury. As you can tell, none of these injuries, except for Ricky Pearsall's, and we've already talked a lot about that, are injuries that are keeping a player out for the entire season. And I would say that all of them that I just listed are injuries that the 49ers hope are resolved by week one. There are issues around the entire league, injury-wise. I think that there's been PTSD regarding the 49ers injury situation, maybe rightfully so, given what happened last year, but it's important not to overreact to injuries in the sport of football, which is essentially synonymous with injuries. The 49ers can field the healthiest possible team, not just by week one, but by January and February. Well, that's the bigger key. You cannot win a Super Bowl in August, but you can certainly lose one. I was on KNBR a little bit earlier, and we talked about all things 49ers training camp. So here from Francisco Park, this is what used to be a reservoir. And because it's up on a hill, Russian Hill, water, they used gravity to service the northern neighborhoods like North Beach of San Francisco. But anyway, here from Francisco Park with a view of the Golden Gate Bridge and Alcatraz, how about you listen in to my KNBR interview?
I'm settling back in here into the city for the season, and I think that the dog days of training are over because the first practice against somebody else has come, and now tomorrow we finally have a game. So the toughest stretch is behind us, and it's really starting to feel real. I love that.
Yeah, kind of the first chapter ending, and now we go into the game starting tomorrow against the Titans, chapter 2, and then eventually leading to the opener September 10 in Australia. So, David, if you had to kind of write the theme piece, so your teacher says, what did I do this summer? What would be the theme from July 27th to now? And is it injuries?
It's funny because obviously the Ricky Pearsall situation was a gut punch, but that was an injury that he suffered last year. It's just something that has never fully healed. And I think that because last year especially was so difficult with the injuries for the 49ers, I think there's this PTSD, and I think that the media and social media is really ready to hop on it. So even guys that they're holding out for precautionary reasons now, it turns into a national story. There's the whole substation thing going on. I think that the injuries are actually overblown this year for the 49ers so far, and you can knock on wood. You can hope that they stay overblown because obviously things can go further south in a hurry. So I don't think objectively that's the main story of 49ers training camp. If it had been, they wouldn't have even conducted the joint practice with the Titans. When they start canceling joint practices like they did in 2024 when they were supposed to have one with the Saints and they didn't have enough healthy guys to confidently get through one, then I think you could seriously have that conversation. But for now, I think that obviously they do have an older offense. Guys like Mike Evans and Christian McCaffrey, you have to believe that they're going to be ready for week one. They're managing them to ensure that they're going to be ready for when the games count. I think so far the overarching two themes for the 49ers have been how good Brock Purdy has looked at camp on the offensive side, and that's really, really important for that offense to be elite, and the 49ers are going to need it to be the locomotive that pulls the train. And two, what Raheem Morris is doing to the defense, because his resume has stops at many different types of schemes, right? He's run 4 down front, 5 down front, 4-3-3-4, all this stuff, and he's majored in secondary coaching. He's a DB guy, and he has brought the changes that we thought that he would bring based on his resume to this 49ers defense, and he's creating this hybrid scheme that I think is going to be fascinating to track over the course of this season.
David, you're right. To your point, there's been a lot of talk this offseason about that change from Robert Saleh to Raheem Morris. So with both of them being on the field yesterday for the joint practices, were you able to notice some of those differences, maybe different styles and schemes that Raheem's going to go with this season?
There was one play that really stood out to me. I was standing 5 yards away from it. Sometimes you're really far away at the joint practices, sometimes things develop right in front of you. And it was Will Levis, one of the backup Titans quarterbacks, was rolling to his left, and Jaden Duggar and Larry Worth, who were two 49ers rookie linebackers, were pressuring him and sprinting out toward the sideline to cut off his throwing vision on the rollout. And between those two guys, there's almost 14 feet of combined wingspan. Jaden Duggar has a 7-foot wingspan. Larry Worth is not too far behind him, and they both had their arms outstretched up, and Will Levis could not see over both of these defenders. Two extremely unusually tall linebackers. I've yet to actually find a linebacker in NFL history, like a stack linebacker with a 7-foot wingspan, other than Jaden Duggar. Normally, those guys are going to play edge rusher, and he's going to play some edge for the 49ers as well. But they are very, very insistent on this hybridized defense where the guys in the front seven are playing in multiple different spots, and Morris is huge on length. I mean, he wants length to clog passing lanes, to do what we saw Worth and Duggar do yesterday to Will Levis, just completely choke off and any vision to where he might want to throw the football. And then Levis just had to throw the ball away, and Larry Worth was fired up, and it was right next to me, so it just kind of was imprinted on my mind. Oh, this is what Raheem Morris wants from this defense. He wants extreme length and extreme adaptability, because we have seen a practice where Jaden Duggar even worked with the defensive ends, and I'm sure that he's going to be rushing the passer from that position, but he's also going to be playing that linebacker position for the 49ers.
Interesting stuff to see Raheem Morris as he uses these pieces here. And, Jaden Duggar, a linebacker rookie, who's getting some buzz here. Speaking of another rookie, I want to ask you about Romello Height and the pass rush. Listen, we talked about it earlier in the show. Last year's pass rush just was one of the worst they've had in the Shanahan era, if not the worst. Nick Bosa's week to week with tendinitis. I don't know the Keon White situation. Maybe you could fill me in. We know Odigizua was a big ad. We hope for Alfred Collins and C.J. West. But is Romello Height, as a result, because of their need for pass rush and because how he's flashing, going to be a guy who plays this year and gets reps? And sort of the corollary is how you're feeling about the pass rush in general on August 12th.
Well, so it's really interesting because he falls into a similar bucket, Romello Height, as the other two guys that I was talking about, as Jaden Duggar and Larry Worth. Now, they call it the feverback position. That's the new terminology. And KJ Wright, the linebackers coach, explained that it's because fever means you're sick, and you have to be a football sicko to play the position, because you've got to learn a bunch of different spots. Some of the feverback candidates are going to be more linebacker rooted, like a Jaden Duggar or a Larry Worth. Some of the feverback candidates, like a Romello Height, are going to be more edge rusher rooted. So it's whatever position is more of your home base, that's where you're rooted. So Romello Height is more of an edge rusher, but he's also the lightest edge rusher the 49ers have had in these 10 years under Shanahan and Lynch. He's under 240 pounds. He is extremely quick off the ball, but even in college, he executed several coverage drops. And Chris Kacerek says that he eats a lot of grass with his strides, because he's very, very quick and has long strides as well, with, I think, 6'4" height. So Romello Height has been very intriguing in a similar way, that he can execute the adaptable defense that Raheem Morris is going to want to implement with the 49ers, but he definitely is the most polished pass rusher out of that trio of guys that I've talked about. My one concern with Romello Height, and this is going to remind you guys a little bit of D Ford, and I know there have been comparisons to D Ford with the get-off, but he's jumped off sides a lot in practice, in one-on-ones, during team drills, and it's obvious why. His biggest comparative advantage is his get-off, so he wants to maximize that. But because he's a little bit lighter, he can't afford to get swallowed up by a tackle, so he has to have that initial step. And it's led to him jumping off sides quite a bit. The 49ers are trying to work on that, and he's trying to work on that. He might be more effective in home games and in games where the 49ers have a big crowd advantage, which is a lot of road games too, because with that noise, he's going to be able to better time up snap counts. And that first step, if he gets it off on time, not too early, looks really, really lethal. But he's going to have to learn how to deal with NFL hard counts and all that, so he's not jumping off sides.
David, the rookie that has gotten the most headlines this offseason is Zhaun Stribling. What can you tell us about his connection with Brock Purdy throughout camp and how he looked yesterday against the Titans?
I mean, he might be the best receiver in the class, guys. Yesterday, he clearly looked better than Carnell Tate, who was the top pick of the class. But he had the benefit of Purdy throwing to him, and Purdy's been on fire this training camp. So it's hard to make that comparison when the situations are different. But if you just look at the large picture of work, and I go back to college too for Zhaun Stribling. He played in 3 different systems, succeeded in all 3, showed at Oklahoma State that he could run the intermediates and could separate on just some of the garden variety routes 10 to 20 yards down the field, showed at Ole Miss that he could run the go balls and could catch the screen and run away from 4-4 corners that played for Georgia. I mean, you put on the highlight tape, there's a catch and run touchdown where Stribling runs away from a corner who was drafted, who ran a 4.40 at the combine. So he's got legit 4.3 speed when the pads are on. And then you look at him now performing in camp, and you see the size, you see the 6'3" height, you see the muscle. He's separating. He can generate separation outside of the scheme. It's him and Mike Evans are the 2 guys that Pearsall was able to do that, but he's hurt now. So he could really, really beat man coverage. And more important than anything is the fact that he catches everything that's thrown his way. He only dropped 1 pass last year at Ole Miss. He hasn't dropped anything yet over the course of training camp. And another day, Leonard Hankerson, the receivers coach, he just mentioned that one thing that sold the 49ers on Zhaun Stribling was that he would not back down from trying to cross-sift block Ruben Bain, an edge rusher, a defensive end who went number 15 overall to Tampa Bay, who's about 40 to 50 pounds heavier than him in college. And apparently the 49ers fell in love with Stribling when they saw that toughness, because it showed them that he can run block in their system, and 2, showed them that this guy could probably run over the middle of the field and hold on to the football, because he has the guts to try to get in there and block somebody who's 50 pounds heavier than him. And all of the things that they kind of scouted have showed up on the field so far. So now we have to see it carry over to games, but every indication is that he's the real deal at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's having a great camp for sure here. We're talking to David Lombardi of the SF Standard, who, of course, covers the 49ers comprehensively. Read him at sfstandard.com. There's so many different things we can ask you about, but just in the final few minutes here, I'll just look at the running back depth chart, because obviously we know about Christian McCaffrey, and I don't know if you feel about him being held out, if that's okay, if, he's such a Ferrari Maserati. We're so sensitive to his every tweak. But behind him, we were so excited about Kaelon Black the first few days of camp. I don't know what his status is. Jordan James at the end of last year, there was a hope that he would flash, but he has that rib thing. So just fill us in a little bit on the running back depth chart situation, for the next 4 weeks.
Well, you mentioned earlier Keon White. He actually has a similar injury. It's an adductor. It's a core muscle injury as Kaelon Black. So based on my understanding, that'll take a few weeks. It's already been a little bit of time for both of those players. So I think they hope to have him back by week 1, although I haven't fully confirmed that yet. And Jordan James, I would expect back by week 1, probably even earlier for sure. That's a fractured rib, so a little bit more straightforward than the adductor injury. Those are tough injuries for the 49ers. They were running with only 3 running backs for the joint practice yesterday. Khalil Herbert actually had a couple nice cuts and runs, and they've got Patrick Taylor Jr., who's been in the system here for a couple of years now, and Sincere McCormick, who's been a practice squad running back for the team. I wouldn't worry about McCaffrey. I think that they're more than happy with the work that he's already put in, and he's going to be ready to go for week 1 based on what he's already done timing-wise with the offense. Now it's a matter of management for McCaffrey. I think that the plan proved to be really good for him last year. He was able to give him 413 touches, and he has looked even more explosive than last year. And I think it's because he's got a year removed from the Achilles tendinitis in 2024. So even though he's gotten older, he's further away from the really troublesome injury in 2024. And I would expect Christian McCaffrey to have a big year, but you do need to manage it, right? And they've talked about the importance of that, which is why they have Jordan James, why they have Kaelon Black, and there are going to be opportunities for both of those guys. The key is to get healthy, get back. And one thing Clay Kubiak said the other day that really resonated with me, he said, guys get hurt in the league. The pros are able to be ready regardless. The pros are doing the film study behind the scenes or taking mental reps. And, yeah, maybe it will take them a week to knock off the rust, but if Kaelon Black is who the 49ers think he is, even though he misses some of this training camp, they think that he could still be a big positive contributor for this team once he is back from the adductor injury.
Yeah, I'd like to see him. So, Dave, let's leave it at this. Given how, the 49ers are not planning to play a whole lot of starters, if any, tomorrow night against the Titans, what should a 49er fan look for tomorrow night?
Well, last year they didn't play their starters in the first preseason game. They never do with Kyle Shanahan. They usually wait until the second game to play the starters for a couple series, and then the third game to play them for a quarter or maybe even a half. But last year they played the Broncos, and the Broncos put their starters out there, and the 49ers ran essentially their second team defense, which was a ton of youngsters, especially last year. And I don't know if you guys remember, but the first two drives where that was the matchup, Broncos ones versus 49ers rookies, the 49ers dominated Denver. Like Denver, I don't even know if they picked up a first down. The Denver media was freaking out. And I thought that was a really, really good indication of things are going to go well for the 49ers this year if they can stay healthy. And obviously they didn't. But the youngsters for the 49ers in that first preseason game actually ended up playing really well early in the season before all the injuries happened. And then they lost their leaders and Bosa and Warner. So this might actually be a little bit more of a measuring stick for the 49ers depth than people want to give it credit for, because they do get to play the first unit of an opposing team. The Titans are going to play everybody. I know it's a young team, but they did add quite a bit of talent this offseason. I really like Robert Saleh as a coach, and I think it should be a really interesting test for some of the younger guys like a Jaden Duggar, like a Larry Worth, that we were talking about. And if they can have similar success to what they did last year against Denver over those first two possessions, that'd be a big arrow up for the 49ers.
Good stuff, man. It's that time. We're finally ready to see those guys in uniform on the field tomorrow, and then on we go. So thanks for the time. Love the coverage in the SF Standard, and we'll chase you down the road.
Yeah, thanks.